We are going to discuss about ptosis, that is also known as blepharoptosis. Okay, so what are the contents we are going to cover in this video? That is the what is ptosis, result after ptosis, classification of ptosis, congenital ptosis, acquired ptosis, and the picture of congenital and acquired ptosis for better understanding. Clinical evaluation is also there, examination of ptosis with video, treatment with video. Treatment means the surgical treatments that involve in ptosis are being discussed with videos. Special investigation for acquired ptosis. So these are the things we are going to cover. First, what is ptosis? As we all know that ptosis is a drooping of upper eyelid, as well as what is a thing with the drooping of upper eyelid. This is not sufficient, right? And the drooping of upper eyelid means whenever the cornea is being covered by 2 to 3 more than 2 mm, then what does this mean? This means that our upper eyelid is covering the cornea more than 2 or more than 2 mm. Okay, so drooping of upper eyelid which can happen in one or both eye in an individual. What is this? What does this mean? This means that the ptosis ptosis can be unilateral or a bilateral. Unilateral means only in one eye. If it is affecting only in one eye, then it is being in unilateral ptosis, and if it is affecting in both eyes, then the bilateral ptosis. As you can see in the image also, normal eye and ptotic eye. The normal eye is having no covering of cornea, okay, but the ptotic eye is being covered by more than 2 mm by the upper eyelid. So this is a ptosis. Now ptosis, as I have told you, uniocular as well as binocular. Uniocular means only one eye is being affected, and binocular is both eyes are affected, as you can see in the image. Now the second image. What does this mean? MRD. MRD is marginal reflex distance. Why I have told you this at the first of the slides? Because this is necessary to understand for the ptosis. MRD is the marginal reflex distance. We will conquer about the ptosis by this MRD. Okay, mainly whenever we are able to see the marginal reflex distance, that is between the pupillary reflex as well as the distance between pupillary reflex and the upper eyelid margin. So this is a distance between pupillary reflex and upper eyelid margin. This is normal one, A1, and the B is having mild ptosis with 2 mm covering. What does this mean? This means that cornea is being covered with 2 mm measurement by the upper eyelid, okay, and the moderate ptosis is 3 mm. That is, the cornea is being covered by 3 mm measurement by the upper eyelid. The severe ptosis is being covered by 4 mm or more by the upper eyelid. Okay, cornea is being covered here. So this is the marginal reflex distance. Now result after ptosis. Result after ptosis means whenever the patient comes to you having ptosis, what kind of things he will tell you? Okay, difficulty in opening the affected eye. Whenever he says that he is having difficulty in opening his ptotic eye strain is there, eyebrow ache is there. Eye strain or eyebrow ache means why these kinds of things being taken by the patient, why these kind of things being experienced by the patient. Why eye strain and eyebrow ache? Because whenever you try to elevate your upper eyelid, okay, whenever you try to elevate your upper eyelid, this makes the eye strain, this makes the eyebrow ache, because you are unable to open or elevate your upper eyelid. From as I have written this also, from increased effort which is needed to raise your affected eyelid. Fatigue, especially while reading. Fatigue means the sleepiness. You all know that in the reading position, what we do? We look in the downward gaze. Okay, and that downward gaze is a criteria for upper eyelid also, because it is going drooping, right? So that makes our eye sleepiness while reading. If we see with the ptotic eye for the reading condition, then what happen? We will experience fatigueness. We will experience sleepiness. Cosmetic appearance issued by patient. Cosmetic appearance means we all know that having a disease by any patient that makes sometimes the cosmetic appearance affected, and that was being done with ptosis also. So this is an issue for the patient sometimes. Classification with cause for ptosis. What does the ptosis have classification? It has two kind of classification, the congenital and the acquired one. The congenital, you all know, it is since birth. The acquired one, it will affect later in their life. Okay, so congenital. We will understand the cause for congenital ptosis. Cause is defect in levator muscle which raise the eyelid. For the congenital ptosis, although or almost levator muscle is responsible. Whenever there is a defect in levator muscle, the congenital ptosis is there. With the congenital ptosis, the levator muscle is always responsible. So since birth of variable, severity one or both drooping of eyelid. What does this mean? This means that it can be uniocular, it can be binocular in the congenital ptosis. Lid crease is either diminished or absent. Lid crease is either, what is lid crease? Lid crease is the upper lining, or you can say skin fold, that is on the upper eyelid. Okay, the above the margin of upper eyelid. So this is lid crease. Sometimes it is diminished or sometimes it is absent in congenital ptosis. Levator palpebrae muscle function may be poor, good, depending upon the degree of weakness. It means the levator muscle is being affected here. So what happens? It makes the grading. The grading for what? For poor functioning, for good functioning, for weak, for fair functioning, due to its weakness. How much the levator muscle is being weakened with this kind of congenital ptosis? It depends on the degree of weakness only. Okay, so if it is get more weakened, then it is a severe condition. It creates severe condition, severe ptosis. If it is normal, then the mild ptosis will be there. So these are the things will affect with the levator palpebrae muscle function. Now congenital ptosis is mainly seen in two syndromes. What kind of two syndromes? Blepharophimosis syndrome, Marcus-Ganjau syndrome. Blepharophimosis syndrome is a syndrome seen in children, as well as it affects the eyelid as well as ovaries. The eyelids and ovaries, eyelids, if it is affecting eyelid, then what happen? The patient will have narrow eyes. The patient will have droopy eyelids sometimes with this syndrome. The patient will have epicanthal fold. What is epicanthal fold? Epicanthal fold, I will show you the image also. Epicanthal fold is a fold of upper eyelid which covers the inner corner of eye. See this. Whenever it is covering, the fold of upper eyelid is covering the inner fold of eye. So this is the epicanthal fold. As well as what happening here, you can see the blepharophimosis syndrome is being there in a child. So this makes a narrow eyelid. As you can see, the eyes are small, as well as there is a large distance between these two eyelids. There is a large distance between these two eyelids. These are widely separated. As well as the ptosis is there. You can see the bilateral ptosis. So this is the kind of things we will see with blepharophimosis syndrome. Now, the Marcus-Ganjau syndrome. The Marcus-Ganjau winking syndrome is a winking motion of affected eyelid on the movement of jaw. I will show you this. This means whenever the patient will move his jaw, the ptotic eye is being seen. See this. It is moving and the ptotic eye is also affecting. So this is Marcus-Ganjau syndrome. Now acquired ptosis. Acquired ptosis affects patient later in their life. As we all know, it may be due to aging, it may be due to any injury, it may be due to any trauma. So these are the things being there with acquired ptosis. The cause is defect in muscle or nerve of the eyelid. Due to any injury, due to any trauma, due to any aging, there is a weakness in muscle, there is a defect in muscle, there is paralysis of nerve supply of the eyelid. So this can occur with simple aging or injury, as I have told you. Weakness of eyelid muscle. This is also known as myotonic dystrophy or myasthenia gravis. This myotonic dystrophy and myasthenia gravis is due to the muscle weakness only. So this may cause many things, like you can see here. This may cause, myasthenia gravis may cause cataract, myasthenia gravis may cause heart problems, myasthenia gravis may cause digestive problems, skeletal muscle atrophy, as well as with the eyes. I want to tell you, with the eyes, it will cause the diplopia, the blurring of vision, the you can say ptosis, and shortness of breath is there, swallowing may difficulty in swallowing. So these are the things will be experienced with myasthenia gravis. Now the paralysis of nerve supplying in the eyelid can cause it to droop. The nerve supply, which nerve supply the upper eyelid, the oculomotor nerve, the third cranial nerve you can say, this can supply the eyelid, and that is being affected. So what happens? It won't droop. It will droop. Okay, so it will droop, and due to its weakness it will droop. Then you can see here, this is a muscle R, muscle levator palpebrae superiosus. It will help to elevate our upper eyelid, and if it get affected, what happen? Our eyelid will droop. Classification of acquired ptosis. It is of 4 types: neurogenic, myogenic, aponeurotic, and mechanical. The neurogenic, by its term only we can understand that there is a nerve supply affected. Okay, so third nerve palsy is there with Horner syndrome. Horner syndrome, what is Horner syndrome? Horner syndrome is a kind of disrupted pathway from the brain to the one side of face. Okay, it is a disrupted nerve pathway which is one-sided, which affect only one side of face, and that includes ptosis. Then multiple sclerosis. What is multiple sclerosis? Whenever our immune system eats away our protective layer of nerve covering, whenever our immune system will eat away the protective covering of nerve, then what happens? The communication get disrupted, and that communication is very much beneficial for the eyelid to function properly. But if it get defected or if it get disrupted, then what happens? Our eye doesn't get any kind of signal or any kind of things, and it will droop. Okay, the myogenic is a kind of you can say it is a disorder of myoneural junction. Okay, so what is myoneural junction? Myoneural junction is a muscle and neural junction, and that if it get defected, what happens? Whatever the myasthenia gravis will cause, the drooping of upper eyelid, the diplopia, the blurring of vision, so these are the things being affected with myogenic. Okay, aponeurotic. What is aponeurotic here? Aponeurotic is a complicated term but easy one, and it is very common. It is seen very common because of the surgeries. Whatever we did as a cataract surgery, whatever we did as a retinal detachment surgery, sometimes what happened at that time, the levator palpebral muscle superiosus will get dislocated from its original position from tarsus. Okay, and that causes the drooping of upper eyelid. So if it get dislocated after the surgery, then this comes under the aponeurotic. It is involutional senile ptosis. It is due to traumatic dehiscence also. Sometimes what happens, there is a trauma. Suppose there is a trauma in the eye, you had an injury with the eye, and what happened, we need to dislocate or we need to remove dehiscence your levator palpebral muscle, or it get dehiscent with trauma only, then this will create aponeurotic ptosis. The mechanical one. Mechanical ptosis is a kind of ptosis whenever you will experience some excessive weight on your upper eyelid. Due to what? Due to lid tumors, due to chalazion, due to lid edema. These are the things responsible for mechanical ptosis. It may occur due to scarring also. Sometimes there is a scarring, and due to scarring the cornea get covered, so this is also a ptosis. Okay, so this is a mechanical one. Acquired ptosis images. You can see in the first image the third nerve palsy. Third nerve palsy is having by a patient where the unilateral ptosis is there and the defective adduction position is there for in the first image, this one. And in the second image, the normal abduction position is there, but there is a defective elevation because the third nerve palsy is there to make your eyelid elevate. So if it get defected, then what happen? You will experience a defection in elevation as well as defection in depression also. Now the second image. Second one is a Horner syndrome image. What does this I want to say with this that the left eye is being affected with the Horner syndrome, so the one sided is being affected with that, and you will experience mild ptosis. Okay, the mechanical ptosis, you can see the examples. Dermatocalcis is there, large tumors is there, severe lid edema, anterior orbital lesions. So these may cause the mechanical ptosis. You have an excessive weight on your upper eyelid. Now myoneural junction disorder. What happens with myoneural junction disorder? It may create your facial expressions changed. Okay, so if your facial expressions get changed, you can see here the left eye is being changed in by its normal position. So this is a myoneural junction disorder causing the ptosis, causing diplopia, sometimes causing blurring of vision also. So these are the things. Now aponeurotic ptosis. Aponeurotic ptosis is seen after the surgery whenever our levator palpebral superioris muscle get dislocated from its original position from tarsus. So this is seen here. It has good levator elevation, it has good levator function, as well as eyelid droop in downward gaze. So the downward gaze is being affected in this case. Sometimes it is affected in the elevation also. Lid crease. What I am talking about for lid crease is whenever you do the ptosis examination, you need to know about these distance also. So you need to know about pretarsal skin height here. You can see it's a distance between upper eyelid crease as well as the pupil reflex. Okay, and what is the eyebrow height? Eyebrow height is the margin of eyebrows as well as margin of upper eyelid distance. Then intercanthal distance. Intercanthal distance is being distance between the separation of both eyes. Interpupillary distance, the distance between both eyes, pupil distance. Okay, separation you can say. The upper eyelid crease height. Upper eyelid crease height in the second image is the distance between upper eyelid crease as well as upper eyelid margin. So this is all about lid crease, what we need to examine for ptosis. Now the clinical evaluation of ptosis. Clinical evaluation is a kind of evaluation we will do for every patient, but for ptosis what we need to do, we need to check out the history, we need to check out the age of onset of ptosis, we need to check for family history, is there any congenital cause or not, is there any presence of diplopia. For that we can find out that is there any misthania gravis or not. Due to misthania gravis it may cause. Variability of ptosis, how much it is variable to the patient, it was mild, it is moderate, it is severe. So these things will be judged out. Symptoms of systemic problems is there or not. any other contributing factor is there or not. Any other contributing factor means the mechanical one. Is there any tumor, is there any lesion that makes the ptosis the pseudotosis, and that is being excluded while examining. Okay, examination. What kind of examination we will do? So these will include the first we need to make our patient in normal position, normal head position. We will exclude the pseudotosis, as I have told you, due to trauma, due to edema. Vertical palpebral fissure height will be checked, distance between the upper eyelid and lower eyelid. Normal palpebral fissure height is 10 to 12 mm, but if it get decreased, then what happen? There is a presence of ptosis. Measuring the amount of cornea covered depending on ptosis. So this is a marginal reflex distance which we judged, and if it is 2 mm, then we will say it is a mild ptosis. If it is covering 3 mm, then we will say moderate ptosis. If it is covering 4 mm, we will say severe ptosis. The marginal reflex distance is a distance between the corneal light reflex and the center of upper eyelid margin. Levator muscle function. How we can check the levator muscle function? We will press our thumb on the affected side of eyebrow. Okay, on the affected side, where the ptotic eye is there, then we will just press the eyebrow of that side, and we will ask the patient to just elevate his or her eyelid as much as he can. Okay, so if the patient is able to elevate 15 mm measurement, elevate his ptotic eyelid by 15 mm, then it is normal. If he is elevating about 8 to 15 mm, then it is good. If it is he is elevating 5 to 7 mm, then it is fair. If he is elevating less than 4 mm, then it is poor. And if it is if there is no elevation, then no levator muscle function is there. So it is also known as Burke's method. Bell's phenomena. What we need to check by Bell's phenomena? We need to ask the patient to close his eyelid first tightly and then open it. And if the patient is able to open or rolled up his upper eyelid, then what we can consider the patient is normal. But if he is experiencing any kind of difficulty while rolling up his upper eyelid, then we will judge as ptosis. Jaw winking phenomena, as I have told you about this, there is whenever we ask the patient to open his mouth or close his mouth, then and move his jaw side to side, we will observe the movement of ptotic eyelid. Okay, so this is examination. We will judge here the this is a video for examination. We will examine the palpebral fissure height. We will examine the marginal reflex distance. We will examine and we will compare the ptotic eye with the normal eye. Okay, so have a look over it.
This video provides a basic overview of the physical exam for patients presenting with eyelid ptosis. The exam starts with assessing the patient's general facial symmetry, eyelid position, forehead creases, and particularly in older patients, an assessment of the eyelid skin laxity, as oftentimes dermatochalasis or sagging skin is the cause of their visual obstruction. At this point, the examiner should be asking themselves several questions. Are the eyelid positions equal? As you can appreciate in this case, the right upper lid is lower than that on the left. Is the head tilted back to allow the patient to see underneath the eyelids? Are there thick forehead rhytids from frontalis muscle contraction to allow the patient to elevate the eyelids? Is the upper lid crease well defined? It's often poorly defined or absent in congenital ptosis, as is the case here, age-related ptosis, or as a normal finding in Asian patients.
So
Next, we measure the palpebral fissure distance in primary gaze, which in this case is approximately 4 to 5 millimeters on the affected side and 9 millimeters on the normal side. The marginal reflex distance, which is the distance from the corneal light reflex to the upper eyelid margin, measures approximately 3 millimeters on the normal side, but is not visible on the affected side unless we
corneal
retract the
reflex is
affected
not
eyelid,
visible
measuring
in the
approximately
affected eyelid.
negative 2 millimeters. Then we measure the eyelid excursion. This is is done by bracing the thumb on the superior orbital rim to
We are
eliminate
measuring
any
the levator
congregation of the
function
frontalis
test
muscle on
by
eyelid
pressing it
elevation. The patient is then
eyebrow
asked to look
of the
downwards
affected
where the
side.
position of the eyelid margin is marked as the starting point, and then to look upward.
We are going to ask the patient to elevate his
On the
eyelid,
affected side, the
and
excursion
then we will
measures
measure
0.2
that.
milliliters, whereas on the unaffected eye, it measures approximately 15 milliliters, which is normal. In cases of congenital ptosis, like the one presented here, excursion is usually almost entirely absent. Conversely, in age-related ptosis, where there is partial dehiscence of the levator aponeurosis, the excursion is usually normal. Finally, it's important to remember the basics and examine the patient's pupils and eye movements to exclude other causes of ptosis, such as meiosis with Horner syndrome or mydriasis and poor eye movements with a third nerve palsy. And of course, best corrected visual.
While examining the ptosis examination, we will check out that is there any drug effect or not. Okay, so with the treatment of ptosis, now moving forward to the treatment of ptosis, the congenital ptosis is almost needed a surgical connection. Okay, with that we will consider that the patient will have mild to moderate ptosis by 3 to 4 years of age. If it is less than 3 to 4 years, then we will wait for the 3 to 4 years of age. It can be done by any of the following. The surgical method involves levator resection, frontalis sling operation, that is brow suspension, tarsoconjunctivo-mulrectomy, Franzala cervate operation. For acquired ptosis, the conservative treatment is there, and surgical procedures that involves levator resection, frontalis sling operation, as well as tarsoconjunctivo-mulrectomy. So these are the things we will check for the treatment of ptosis. We will do as a treatment of ptosis. Levator resection include, I will tell you first because we will see the video after this. So levator resection involves the resection of levator muscle or for the surgery of levator muscle to be there on the upper eyelid, so that our eyelid will open or elevate. Now frontalis sling operation includes, there is a silicone thread will be attached with the brow suspension, so that we will attach the folds of skin, whatever the ptosis is there, we will attach the folds of skin with the silicone material. With that we will just reattach our skin or upper fold of eyelid with the eyebrow. Okay, so this can be seen in the video. Tarsoconjunctivo-mulrectomy include, there is a we will just exclude the extra fold of eyelid from the inner side of eye. So this can be seen in the Franzala cervate operation. You can see here the levator resection surgery.
Keratosis, the eye surgeon will make an incision in the crease of the upper eyelid skin or on the inside of the eyelid where you can't see it. There are muscles responsible for raising the eyelid. The surgeon will tighten one of the muscles or reattach it to the upper lid using stitches or surgical adhesive. The final position of the eyelid depends on how the tissue heals. If needed, the surgeon will adjust the stitches in the eyelid to adjust its height.
So this can be cured by levator resection.
Keratosis,
Now, congenital ptosis correction by tarsofrontalis sling surgery, the brow
This video
suspension.
illustrates congenital ptosis correction by tarsofrontal sling surgery using 800 micron silicone performed in a 4-year-old male under general anesthesia. Eyelid markings are placed at the mid-tarsus, 8 millimeters apart. Brow markings are done in line with the medial and lateral canthus. The forehead marking is done 8 to 10 millimeters above the superior orbital margin. With the eyelid stabilized using traction suture and an added spatula, incisions are placed on the markings using a scalpel blade. frontalis pocket is created, which would be used later in the surgery. A 900 microns malleable needle, atraumatically swabbed to silicone, is passed through the forehead incision to emerge through the lateral brow incision, which is then threaded out through the lateral eyelid incision. The needle is then passed in the pretarsal plane to emerge through the medial eyelid incision, ensuring that the pass is not full thickness. The needle is then brought out through the medial brow incision and finally through the forehead incision to complete the pentagon. Both ends of the silicone are passed through the silicone sleeve. The sling is tightened to adjust the eyelid height at 1 to 2 millimeters below the superior limbus. For further reinforcement to prevent slippage, 6-prolene suture is used around the sleeve. The ends of the silicone sling are trimmed and buried in the prefrontalis pocket created earlier. The forehead and brow incisions are closed with 6-prolene suture. A reverse frost suture is then taken through the lower eyelid to prevent corneal exposure in the immediate postoperative period. The patient had an eventless postoperative recovery with good aesthetic outcome.
So this is all about brow suspension. Now mulrectomy. As here we will only resect the extra fold of skin by suturing it. So see this video. They are measuring, okay? Now they are suturing it. At the end, they will cut out the extra fold. See this, they are resecting it. Conjunctivomuscular resection is there. Knotting the gauze pad. the procedure is generally bilateral. Okay, it is done in bilateral condition. Now, acquired ptosis treatment. Acquired ptosis treatment includes surgical procedure as same as congenital ptosis. Conservative treatment include eye drops, which is given to the patient in case of trauma and edema. In case of trauma and edema, we will provide the eye drops to the patient first to heal the trauma or to heal the edema. As there are some special investigation for acquired ptosis, that is Stencilin test. Whenever we find that there is a Misthania gravis suspicion with ptosis, then what we will do, we will just inject a intravenous of androphonium, that is Stencilin, in Misthania condition. Phenylephrine test is carried out in patients suspected of Horner syndrome. Whenever we will suspect a Horner syndrome with the ptosis, then we will check out for phenylephrine test and we will confirm it. Neurological investigation may be required to find out the cause in patients with neurogenic ptosis. Whenever we will, it is common, whenever we will we will see that there is a neurogenic ptosis, then we will obviously, whenever there is a involvement of neurological something, then what we will check out for, we will check out for neurological investigation. So these are the things we will do for acquired ptosis treatment. Now, thank you so much. This is all about the ptosis. Hope you all understand about the session. You may follow us on Telegram. This is Ophthalmology Discussion in Optom World. Or you may follow me on Instagram, Ophthalmology Talk, my YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel, Ophthalmology Discussion. On Facebook, we are at the rate Ophthalmology Lectures. So thank you so much for being there and hearing all the common things or hearing all the important points about the ptosis. Thank you.